This is Braden Smith, and I chose to do my presentation on the Chinese Revolution of 1949. So let's get started. So China has been one of the greatest and longest lasting nations on the planet. They've gone from stages of a collection of villages of small political states into great empires and then back, and they've been through many different phases. They've been destroyed, reformed, and then eventually communized in the space of only a few years in this time of the revolution. So previous to this revolution, China was ruled by Manchuria, which we've been reading about in our book Wild Swans. But that lasted from 1648 up until 1911. And at that time, the Chinese formed a rebellion which drove the Manchurian Empire, and they are also known as the Qing Empire, and they drove them from China, therefore gaining their freedoms. And although they freed themselves, they were free from outside influences, outside empires and rule, but they were not free from themselves. After they had driven away the Qing Empire from their lands, China fell into a sort of state of ruin where they were separated into various petty political states. These states were ruled by warlords, and they really weren't an organized system of government that was powerful, that had their own systems of reliable self-defense. Instead, they were separated individual states that really did not have a whole lot of potential. And most of those warlords were not expert rulers. They imposed heavy taxes and they ruled in a manner that impoverished their states. So the general majority of their political states were very impoverished, not meeting the needs sometimes for survival. So up until 1945, there was a let me go back. In 1927, there was a civil war, and this began just as disputes and some confrontations from leader Chiang Kai-shek and Mao-Tse-Tung. These two leaders were confrontational, and they had very opposing political views. Chiang Kai-shek was the leader of the People's Republic of China, and Mao-Tse-Tung was the leader of the Communists, the Chinese Communist Party. And so, in 1945, Russia invaded Manchuria, and they positioned Mao-Tse-Tung in Manchuria, and they resupplied him with tons of military reinforcements, with actual soldiers, and a very large supply of equipment and weapons to aid him in his fight against Chiang Kai-shek, who was then the leader of most of China. He had reunited the political states. And then I'm going to take a little step back here. In 1931, the People's Republic of China was faced with threats from three different nations. First of all, the Japanese Empire, which was becoming very powerful at that time, as it was during the time of World War II, and then also the Chinese Communist Party, which was led by Mao-Tse-Tung, and also the Communist Russian forces. So they were very outnumbered. And to eliminate those unfair odds, those odds of most likely death and elimination if they were to be attacked by any of these forces, Chiang Kai-shek formed a peace treaty with Japan. And they accepted this. However, his war with Mao-Tse-Tung had only just begun. And the peace treaty with Japan was helpful to him, but it only lasted 6 years. So by 1931, Chiang had organized nearly all of the chaotic political states into a single and unified nation. He was nearly to the point where China had become a self-sustained individual body of government and of power, where they had reliable defenses and reliable economic systems. However, that very time when he was nearly to that point, Japan invaded and annexed Manchuria, which was then ruled by the Chinese Communist Party. Before the Japanese reached China in their invasion, Chiang formed the 6-year truce that I had talked about just a minute ago. And that was to protect China. He had almost reached his goal of completely reuniting China. However, he saw this threat and had to take action. So he made this truce, but when the truce expired in 1937, the Japanese launched a brutal invasion on the Chinese, and they took nearly half of the Chinese nation. So at this time, Harry Truman, President of the United States, signed a treaty with the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, agreeing not to involve any American forces in the Civil War between the Communist Party and the People's Republic of China. However, Truman did his political views did side with the People's Republic of China. So, in hopes that he could help them overcome the Communist Party, he sent them very generous amounts of supplies and weapons. And about this time, the Chinese Communist Party sided with the Japanese. The Japanese were eventually driven out, and the Chinese Communist Party came in and began to invade China again. And eventually, unfortunately for the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party proved to have superior firepower, superior training, and far superior morale, as they had much more organization and instruction, and eventually they overpowered the People's Republic of China. And during the Civil War that they had, both sides suffered great losses, but neither was exterminated completely. The Chinese Communist Party was victorious and took China, but the People's Republic of China was forced to retreat and confine themselves to the one place where they knew they could keep themselves safe. They could ensure their defense. And that was the small island of Taiwan. And so they are still recognized as the People's Republic of China, and they still inhabit Taiwan. Mao-Tse-Tung, who was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, died in 1976. And even though he was a very strong communist believer, and his death did not end the communist dictatorship in China. So they have yet to be freed of their communist dictatorship. He was the one who instigated that in their nation. And then also, though the People's Republic of China suffered great defeats, they are still recognized and they are still united as the People's Republic of China and still inhabit the island of Taiwan. So that is a little bit about the Chinese Revolution of 1949. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day. That is the end of my presentation. All right, thank you all.